All right, scholars, our next topic for today is the difference between formal and informal language. This is a super important topic for us because we need to make sure that we are using the correct form of language for the correct audience. Another term for this is actually called code switching, and it is the ability for us to do exactly what I said, to choose the right kind of speech or writing depending on our audience. Let's take a look first at what formal and informal language actually is. So formal language is the kind of language that we would want to use with somebody at work, or somebody in authority, or somebody unknown if we don't know somebody very well. That might mean an email that I'm sending to a boss. It might mean an email that you're sending to a teacher, or the way that you speak to a teacher, or to a judge if you end up in a court case. You don't want to be using informal language in those situations, or a police officer if they pull you over. Like, there's a different way that you want to talk to people in authority or people that you don't know versus the opposite of those things, which would be what qualifies informal language. You can use informal language with somebody that you know really well. That's going to be friends or like really close relationships, family members, people that you know really, really well. So what does formal language look and sound like? Well, formal language is when we're using really precise word choice, thinking back to strong verbs and specific nouns like we just talked about. Formal language is going to be correct grammar use, both in speaking, meaning that we are conjugating our verbs, thinking about subject-verb agreement, using words in the right order, syntax. It's probably going to avoid contractions in a lot of circumstances, and it's got a formal tone. Tone is like the sound overall, not like of your voice, how your voice sounds, but like the feeling behind your words. Informal language, on the other hand, slang is okay. Emojis are okay if you're sending an email or a text. Grammar rules are loose. It doesn't really matter if you're not following all of them. And there's a different tone of voice, a really informal tone of voice. I think that you can probably tell right away if you think about the difference between texting or messaging one of your friends or sending an email to a friend compared to what an email should look or sound like if you're sending one to a teacher or to Mr. Petrusma. That's probably not, I sure hope not, going to look and sound the same. Now, code switching or informal language is totally okay to use based on the rules of those kinds of language usage. I personally prefer to text with capitals and punctuation marks, but I'm just going to show you my phone here and show you a couple of texts that I have here where I actually am like breaking rules, right? So look at this one here. Oops, I'm tapping on the wrong thing to focus. Read this poem and cry your eyes out. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Crying emoji, crying emoji, crying emoji. I know, I'm a grammar teacher. I know that you're not supposed to have 3 exclamation marks, but I use that all the time in my texting for emphasis, right? Or here's another one. I've got 3 exclamation marks. I've got a spelling mistake. What if? Oh, I didn't spell that correctly. Again, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark, and brain, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. That's not an official punctuation. I'm using that to add emphasis and tone of voice in a text that otherwise doesn't have that tone of voice, right? And look at the response. It's 3 emojis, and that's totally okay to send as a response to texts. If I were to send an email about forgetting something to Mr. Petrusma, to my boss, for example, I would not send one with so many exclamation marks and question marks and exclamation marks mixed together. And I also know that the response would not be emojis. It would be actual words because that's how we communicate in formal language. So, informal language is totally okay. It just has to be chosen at the right times for the right audience, which means people that you know, people who you have a close relationship with, people that you are not friends with. If you are writing something for another audience, make sure that you're using formal language. It's pretty straightforward. It just takes a little bit of practice to get used to that code switching and to really do it automatically.